There is a sin so subtle, so dangerous, and so woven into the fabric of our lives that most of us don't even know it's there. It isn't adultery. It isn't murder. It isn't theft. If you asked A.W. Tozer, he would tell you that the modern church is rotting from the inside out because of a hidden cancer. He called it the idolatry of the self. Tozer was not a gentle pastor. He was a prophet. He didn't care about your feelings. He cared about your soul. And when he looked at the church, he didn't see believers. He saw people who were worshiping a God they had created in their own image. He argued that while we have torn down the idols of wood and stone, we have replaced them with something far worse. We have replaced them with ourselves. We pray, but we trust our own logic. We give, but we seek our own glory. We serve, but we demand to be appreciated. Tozer called this the veil of the self-life. It is the self-righteousness, self-pity, self-confidence, and self-sufficiency that acts like a thick curtain between you and the Holy of Holies. You wonder why you don't feel the presence of God? Tozer would say, "It is because you are too full of you to have any room for Him." In this script, we are going to let A.W. Tozer perform spiritual surgery. It is going to hurt. He is going to cut deep. But if you let him cut the self out of your heart, you will find the one thing you have been searching for your entire life. A.W. Tozer famously said, "It is doubtful whether God can bless a man greatly until he has hurt him deeply. Why would a loving God hurt us? Because he loves us too much to leave us filled with the cancer of self." Tozer believed that the modern church has made a fatal mistake. We have defined sin merely as bad things we do, drinking, lying, stealing. But Tozer looked deeper. He saw that you can stop doing all those things and still be spiritually dead. Why? Because the root of sin is not an action. It is a disposition. It is the disposition that says, "I am the captain of my soul." Tozer called this the self-life. He used the imagery of the Old Testament tabernacle. Deep inside was the Holy of Holies, where the presence of God dwelt. It was separated from the people by a thick, heavy curtain called the veil. When Jesus died, that veil was torn from top to bottom. The way was open. But Tozer argued that we have woven a new veil. It is not made of purple and scarlet thread. It is made of the fine threads of our own ego, self-righteousness, self-pity, self-admiration, self-defense. This veil is so thin you can't see it, but it is so strong that it blocks the light of God completely. In this script, we are going to explore Tozer's masterpiece, The Pursuit of God, specifically the chapter on the rending of the veil. We are going to identify the specific threads that make up your veil, and then we are going to do the only thing you can do with a veil that separates you from God. We aren't going to wash it. We aren't going to fix it. We are going to tear it. To understand the sin you don't know you have, we must first distinguish between the sins of the body and the sins of the spirit. Most Christians are obsessed with the sins of the body. We look at the drunkard, the adulterer, the thief, and the murderer, and we feel safe. We think, well, I don't do those things. I am a clean vessel. A.W. Tozer calls this a fatal delusion. He argues that while we have washed the outside of the cup, the inside is filled with a poison that is far deadlier than alcohol. Tozer called this poison the self-life. It is the subtle, pervasive, and stubborn insistence that I am the center of the universe. Tozer wrote, "To be specific, the self-sins are these: self-righteousness, self-pity, self-confidence, self-sufficiency, self-admiration, self-love, and a host of others like them." Notice the hyphen, self. These sins are not naughty behaviors. They are a state of being. You can be a missionary, a pastor, or a martyr and still be completely consumed by the self-life. How? You preach a sermon, but deep down, you are desperate for people to tell you how good it was. Self-admiration. You serve the poor, but when nobody thanks you, you feel resentful and hurt. Self-pity. You give to the church, but you ensure everyone knows how generous you are. Self-righteousness. Tozer argues that this self acts exactly like the veil in the ancient Jewish temple. In the Old Testament, the veil was a thick curtain that separated the holy God from sinful man. No one could go behind it and live, except the high priest once a year. When Jesus died on the cross, that physical veil was torn in two. The barrier was removed. So why do we still feel distant from God? Why do we pray into the air? Why is there no fire in our hearts? Tozer answers, "We have woven another veil. We have taken the threads of our own ego and woven a fabric so tight that the light of God cannot penetrate it. This veil is not made of cloth. It is made of our own identity. The reason this is the sin most Christians don't know they have is that it often looks like virtue. Self-righteousness looks like holiness. Self-defense looks like standing up for truth. Self-confidence looks like faith. But Tozer warns us, they are not the same. Faith relies on God. Self-confidence relies on your own ability to believe. Holiness relies on Jesus. Self-righteousness relies on your own discipline. The difference is subtle, but the result is catastrophic. As long as the self is on the throne, God is not. God is a jealous lover. He will not share his glory with your ego. He will not fill a temple that is already crowded with idols of yourself. Tozer puts it bluntly. Promoting self under the guise of promoting Christ is currently so common as to excite little notice. We are full of ourselves. We are stuffed with ourselves. And because we are full of self, we are empty of God. But identifying the enemy is only the first step. The real problem is that this enemy is not an intruder. It is not a demon you can cast out. This enemy is you, and you cannot run away from yourself. So how do you destroy a veil that is woven into your own nervous system? How do you kill the self without killing the person? Tozer says we must look at the specific threads of this veil. And the first thread is the one that makes us feel the most justified. It is the thread of possession. If you want to find the thickest thread in the veil of self, look for the most dangerous word in the human language. It is a tiny word, just 2 letters. My money, my house, my children, my job, my ministry. A.W. Tozer identified this as the root of our spiritual deadness, the desire to possess. We are born with our hands clenched. Have you ever tried to take a toy away from a toddler? They scream, they fight, they cry, mine. Tozer argues that most of us never grow out of that toddler phase. We just find more expensive toys. He wrote, "Things have deep roots. They grow into our hearts and can be removed only with difficulty and pain. This is the sin of ownership. We act as if we are the owners of our lives and God is a guest. But the Bible teaches that we are not owners. We are stewards. An owner has rights. A steward has responsibilities." To illustrate this, Tozer points to the most heart-wrenching story in the Old Testament, Abraham and Isaac. Abraham had waited 25 years for a son. Isaac was the miracle child. He was the fulfillment of every promise. But as the boy grew, something dangerous happened. Isaac began to take up the space in Abraham's heart that belonged to God. It wasn't that Abraham stopped loving God. It was that his love for Isaac was becoming an idol. The gift was becoming more important than the giver. God saw this. And because God loved Abraham too much to let him be destroyed by an idol, he issued a terrifying command. "Take now your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and offer him there as a burnt offering." Why? Was God cruel? Was he hungry for blood? No. God was performing surgery. He was cutting the root of possessiveness out of Abraham's heart. Abraham obeyed. He took the boy up the mountain. He bound him. He raised the knife. And in that moment, Abraham died. He died to his desires. He died to his future. He died to his rights as a father. And the moment he died, God stopped him. "Do not lay your hand on the lad, for now I know that you fear God." Here is the profound paradox Tozer teaches. Abraham got to keep the boy, but he lost the ownership. He walked down that mountain with Isaac, but in his heart, he had already given him away. He was now holding Isaac with an open hand, not a clenched fist. Tozer calls this the blessedness of possessing nothing. This is the second thread of the veil you must tear. You must look at everything you call mine and realize it is destroying your intimacy with God. Your children? They are not yours. They are His. Your money? It is not yours. It is His. Your reputation? It is not yours. As long as you clutch these things, God cannot trust you with His power. If He gave you power, you would use it to build your empire, not His. Tozer warns us, if we would indeed know God in growing intimacy, we must go this way of renunciation. We must take our Isaacs, the things we love most, and march them up the mountain. We must lay them on the altar and say, "Lord, this is yours. You gave it and you can take it. I refuse to let this thing own me anymore." When you do that, a massive weight falls off your shoulders. You stop worrying about losing things because you don't own them anyway. You become free. But giving up your stuff is actually the easy part. There is something else we cling to even tighter than our money. It is the third thread of the veil. It is the desperate need to look good in the eyes of others. Tozer calls it the self-defense. We have dealt with the idol of possession, your stuff. Now we must deal with the idol of reputation, your name. A.W. Tozer, observed something fascinating about the human ego. It is incredibly fragile. Have you ever noticed how easily you are offended? A coworker doesn't say, "Good morning." A friend forgets your birthday. A leader criticizes your idea. Instantly, you feel a sharp pain in your chest. You feel slighted. You feel disrespected. And then the instinct kicks in. Self-defense. You rush to explain yourself. You argue. You pout. You replay the conversation in your head for days, crafting the perfect comeback. Tozer argues that this hypersensitivity is a symptom of a deep spiritual sickness. He uses the analogy of a man with an open wound on his arm. If a man has a sore, agonizing wound, he protects it. He walks through a crowded room with his arm held high, terrified that someone might brush against it. If someone bumps him, he screams in pain and gets angry at the clumsy person. But the problem isn't the crowd. The problem is the wound. Tozer says, self is the opaque veil that hides the face of God from us. It is the self-sins, self-righteousness, self-pity, self-confidence, self-sufficiency, self-admiration, self-love. This constant need to protect ourself exhausts us. We spend all our energy building fences around our reputation. We are terrified that people will find out we aren't as smart, holy, or successful as we pretend to be. So, what is the cure? How do you heal the open wound so you can walk through the crowd without fear? Tozer gives us a word that the modern world despises: meekness. Now be careful. We think meekness means weakness. We think it means being a doormat. Tozer defines it differently. He says, the man who enters to take his place in the cockpit of his own life is not meek, but the meek man. The meek man is not a human mouse afflicted with a sense of his own inferiority. Rather, he may be in his moral life as bold as a lion and as strong as Samson, but he has stopped being fooled about himself. Here is the secret. The meek man knows that he is nothing without God, and because he knows he is nothing, he has nothing to defend. If someone calls you a fool, the meek man thinks, you are right. Except for the grace of God, I am worse than a fool. You cannot humiliate a man who has already humbled himself. You cannot knock a man down who is already lying on the floor in worship. Tozer calls this the rest of meekness. Imagine the relief of never having to defend your reputation again. Imagine the relief of letting God be your defense attorney. Jesus is the ultimate example. When he stood before Pilate, falsely accused, mocked, and spat upon, the Bible says, he opened not his mouth. He didn't argue. He didn't say, do you know who I am? He rested in the identity given by his Father. Tozer challenges us to take a knife to the thread of self-defense. He asks us to stop managing our public image. Let people misunderstand you. Let people critique you. Let your reputation die. Because as long as you are obsessed with what people think of you, you will never hear what God thinks of you. The noise of your own ego is too loud. But let's be honest. Reading about this is easy. Doing it is agonizing. Tozer admits that removing the self is not a gentle process. It is not a negotiation. It is a crucifixion. And that leads us to the method. How do we actually tear the veil? Tozer says we must pray a specific prayer, a prayer that is dangerous, violent, and absolutely necessary. We have identified the enemy. It is the self. We have identified the threads of the veil, possession and reputation. Now comes the terrifying question, how do we get rid of it? Most of us try to fix our self-life. We try to be humbler. We try to be more generous. We try to suppress our ego. A.W. Tozer tells us that this is a waste of time. You cannot fix the flesh. You cannot train a wolf to act like a sheep. You have to kill the wolf. Tozer writes, the cross is rough and it is deadly, but it is effective. This brings us to the fourth principle. The cross is not just for the sinner. It is for the saint. We usually think of the cross as the place where Jesus died so we could go to heaven. That is true. But Tozer argues that the cross is also the place where we die so that heaven can come into us. He calls this the operation. Imagine you have a tumor growing near your heart. It is slowly killing you. You go to the surgeon. You don't ask him to put a bandage on it. You don't ask him to give you a pill to make you feel better. You ask him to cut it out. And you know that the surgery will be painful. You know there will be blood. You know there will be a recovery period. But you agree to it because you want to live. Tozer says that God is waiting for us to sign the consent form for spiritual surgery. He will not violate your free will. He will not tear the veil of your heart unless you ask him to. But be warned, this is a dangerous prayer. If you ask God to kill your pride, He will not just zap you with a feeling of humility. No, He will likely allow someone to insult you in public. He will allow you to be overlooked for a promotion. He will allow you to fail. Why? Because that is the scalpel He uses to cut out the cancer of your ego. Tozer challenged his congregation to pray the prayer of the rending. It goes like this: Lord, I consent to the operation. I know it will hurt, but I want to be whole. Use whatever tool you need to remove the self from the throne of my life. Tear the veil, no matter the cost. When you pray this, you are inviting the cross into your daily life. Tozer wrote, "It does not hurt to die, but it hurts to be killed." The process of dying to self is agonizing because the self fights back. It screams, it argues, it justifies. Every time you feel that flare of anger when you are criticized, that is the self fighting for its life. Every time you feel that grip of anxiety when you lose money, that is the self panicking. But Tozer encourages us to hold steady. He says, let the cross do its work. Don't run from the pain. Don't numb it with entertainment. Don't hide in self-pity. Stand there and let God finish the surgery. Because the pain of the cross is temporary, but the freedom it brings is eternal. Most Christians stop halfway. They feel the scalpel, and they run out of the operating room. They choose to keep the tumor because they are afraid of the knife. And so, they live their whole lives as spiritual invalids, saved, but sick. But for the few who stay on the table, for the few who let God finish the work, something miraculous happens. The veil tears, the wall collapses, and suddenly the God who seemed so far away is closer than your own breath. So, the surgery is done. You have allowed God to cut the tumor of self out of your heart. You have let go of your Isaacs. You have stopped defending your reputation. What happens next? Does life become boring? Do you lose your personality and become a robot? A.W. Tozer describes the life on the other side of the veil as the gaze of the soul. Once the blockage is removed, something physics-defying happens. You realize that God was never far away. Tozer wrote, God is here. The universe is filled with Him. He is not a God who is far off, but a God who is near. The problem was never the distance. The problem was the density of your ego. Now that the veil is torn, you enter into the Holy of Holies. And in this place, the rules of life change completely. Tozer calls this spiritual receptivity. Imagine a radio. The radio waves are filling the room right now. Music, news, voices, they are all around you, but you cannot hear them. Why? Because your receiver is broken. The self was the static jamming the signal. Now that the self is silenced, you begin to pick up the transmission of heaven. You start to develop an internal intuition. You read the Bible, and suddenly, it isn't just text, it is a voice. You walk through a crisis, and instead of panicking, you feel a strange, illogical peace. You make decisions, not based on pros and cons, but based on a witness in your spirit. Tozer argues that this is the normal Christian life. Everything else, the religious striving, the dry prayers, the anxiety, is subnormal. When you live behind the torn veil, you move from being self-conscious to being God-conscious. Think about how exhausting it is to be self-conscious. You walk into a room and wonder, do I look okay? Do they like me? Did I say the right thing? It is a mental prison. But the person who has died to self walks into a room and wonders, what is God doing here? How can I serve? The pressure is gone. Tozer describes this freedom beautifully. The man who has God for his treasure has all things in one. He has nothing to do but to wait on God. This is the ultimate paradox of the kingdom. By losing your life, you found it. By giving up your rights, you gained the kingdom. By becoming nothing, you became a vessel for the one who is everything. But Tozer leaves us with a final warning. The veil can be rewoven. Just because you tore it today doesn't mean the threads of pride won't try to grow back tomorrow. The self is a zombie. It keeps trying to climb out of the grave. That is why this life is not a one-time event. It is a habit. Tozer calls it the habit of the gaze. It means you must learn to keep the eyes of your heart fixed on God, even while you are working, driving, or eating. You don't have to be a monk in a monastery. You can be a businessman, a mother, or a student, but deep inside, in the secret chamber of your heart, you are kneeling. You are constantly checking the veil. Is there any pride growing here? Is there any offense? And if you see a thread, you cut it immediately, because once you have tasted the fresh air of the Holy of Holies, You will never want to go back to the stale air of the outer court. You have tasted the reality, and nothing else will satisfy. A.W. Tozer died in 1963. If you visit his grave in Akron, Ohio, you will not find a statue. You will not find a list of his books. You will not find a list of his degrees or titles. The tombstone is simple. It says, A.W. Tozer, a man of God. That was the only title he cared about. He didn't want to be famous. He didn't want to be wealthy. He just wanted to be God's. And because he was willing to tear the veil, because he was willing to take the knife to his own ego, he achieved the one thing that matters in eternity: intimacy. We live in a world that is obsessed with self-help. Go to a bookstore, and you will see rows of books on how to love yourself, promote yourself, and actualize yourself. Tozer stands like a prophet in the wilderness and screams, "It is a trap. Self-help is spiritual suicide." You don't need to help yourself, you need to crucifixion yourself, because only when the seed falls into the ground and dies can it bear fruit. So, here is your diagnostic for the week. Look at your anxiety. Look at your anger. Look at your fear. Trace them back to their root. You are anxious because you are afraid of losing something you think you own. Possession. You are angry because someone disrespected the image you built. Reputation. You are afraid because you think you have to handle life alone. Self-sufficiency. They are all threads in the veil. Take the knife. Pray the prayer that scares you. Lord, I hold nothing back. I defend nothing. I hide nothing. Tear the veil. Even if it hurts, I want to see your face. It is a dangerous way to live, but it is the only way to be truly alive. The veil is torn. The way is open. The King is waiting in the Holy of Holies. Why are you standing in the hallway? Subscribe to this channel. We are bringing back the sharp, uncut truth of the generals of faith. A.W. Tozer taught us how to clean the inner vessel, but there was another man who looked at the church and saw that even with clean vessels we were missing the fire. He was the man who grabbed the church by the collar and shook it until it woke up. He asked the question that haunts us: why is the world going to hell with the church's permission? Leonard Ravenhill. Click here to listen to the man who preached with tears in his eyes and fire in his bones.